This was always going to be the last decade of the People's Republic of China. Let's talk about the third most important reason why we are having government collapse. Chairman Xi has instituted a cult of personality far tighter than any world leader in history, including Mao, including the Chinese emperors of old, including Donald Trump. Okay, that was funny too.
We would like to sternly warn the US once again that China is standing by, and the People's Liberation Army will never sit idly by.
He has intimidated into silence or imprisoned or executed everyone within not just the CCP, but the broader system who is capable of independent thought.
The Foreign Ministry spokesman is in fact a wolf warrior from central casting. His job is to make Xi Jinping happy every morning when he looks at his television screen, less his job to convey accurately what the Chinese military are likely to do.
He no longer has advisors. No one wants to bring him information because they don't know how he's going to react. He has literally shot the messenger so many times that he is making decisions in the dark. Now, this has horrible implications for any economic system, but in a one-man show, it means nothing gets done unless the leader gives you a written order, or you're one of the zealots who sees him on TV and is like, oh, this must be what he meant. So when you see a small army of bureaucrats in head-to-toe surgical stuff out on a runway at an airport with a leaf blower spraying lime to disinfect the runway, that's the kind of policies we're getting out of China now. And of course, COVID. Now, we're in the Midwest. I'm going to guess that there is a diversity of opinions in the room about COVID. Some of us would probably side with vaccines, where others of us think that natural immunity is the way to go. And I think in the privacy of our own homes, when the door is closed and no one's listening, we do think to ourselves, you know, maybe the other side has a point. Okay, is that safe? China doesn't have these options, and it's not because of government. China was very successful for 2 years at keeping COVID out. No one has natural immunity. And the Chinese domestically generated vaccine doesn't work. It barely worked against the wild strain out of Wuhan. It doesn't work at all versus the new stuff. And Omicron B, the one that is dominant in China and dominant here today, it's the most communicable virus pathogen that humans have ever struggled with. And the death rate from it is higher than any of the previous strains. And for us, this is a footnote because we all have multiple sources of resistance now, but the Chinese have none. And if they opened, you'd be looking at 5 million deaths in China a month for at least a quarter, minimum. So they can't. Lockdowns are their only policy tool. Shanghai went into lockdown on April 1. They came out on June 1. They nearly went into lockdown again last week. It's a little touch and go right now. We're all familiar with Vegas, right? What happens in Vegas totally leaves Vegas if it's a venereal disease. Yeah. China right now is struggling with an outbreak in Macau, which is their Vegas. So you should be expecting major metropolitan lockdowns across the country within a month. This is China's new normal. They can no longer participate in manufacturing supply chains because they can't keep the factories open. They are prioritizing health. That comes at a cost. They're going to be losing access to Russian crude because of the war. They're losing access to manufacturing and employment because of their health policy. And we're having government failure as a managerial issue. All that really leaves is food security. Now, we all know that they love their pork. And we all remember African swine fever from 3 years ago when they had to cull more hogs than the rest of the world has hogs commercially. They've offered a series of subsidies at the federal and the local levels in order to encourage hog farmers to re-enter the market, but they forgot to abrogate the debts of the hog farmers that went out of business because of ASF. So you've got 2 million dudes like me taking subsidies who have no idea what to do with a pig. And so they're buying food from everywhere in the world, even if it's not appropriate for hogs. So obviously they're going for soy and corn, but they're like getting broken rice out of India and like croissant grade wheat out of France to feed to pigs. Like the least efficient way to do it. And again, 2 million people who have no idea what they're doing. Now, according to Chinese statistics, there has been no ASF in the country for months. She gets it. Yeah. They're probably in the midst of a fairly significant outbreak again. The question is how far and how loud does it get before they have to do another absolutely top to bottom mass culling. Whether that happens this year or next year, I don't know, because Chinese data. And if they don't have pork, all they've got left is rice. Rice is the crop that is most phosphate intensive. And so the Chinese have traditionally been the world's largest producer and exporter of phosphate because it's a food security issue. Well, they've stopped all exports until further notice. So we've lost potash because of the Ukraine war. We've lost phosphate because of Chinese mismanagement. This is where the oil flows. The thicker the line, the more tankers are on that route. This is the route that matters the most. It is a convenient 6,000 to 7,000 mile sail from the Persian Gulf to the Chinese coast. Now, we've all heard those stories about the Chinese having this massive navy, over 600 ships, versus our 290. However, 90% of the Chinese fleet would fit in this auditorium. Not all at the same time, don't be a dumbass. One at a time. They don't have range. If no one's shooting at them so they can go slow and in a straight line to conserve fuel, they can go 1,000 miles, maybe. Most of them you're talking under 400 under a war scenario, whereas our fleet is entirely blue water. If there is a real conflict in which the Chinese are involved, someone who does not care for them, and that is a long list these days, is going to put 2 destroyers in the Indian Ocean basin and cut the energy line, and China deindustrializes within a year. They are the most vulnerable economy on the planet. And that's only the second reason why I don't see the Chinese surviving the decade. Texans, of course, know what this little spike is. This is what happened last January when Texas got cold. Prices almost tripled. And this right here, this little thing, this is what we're all bitching about right now. It's like we're nowhere near the 50-year average yet, folks. And yet this has got us ripping our hair out. You guys want to see what the Chinese and the Europeans are bitching about? Because this is so much fun. Europe's already in recession. I don't care what the statistics say. China would be in recession from this if it wasn't that they're probably in recession from the COVID lockdowns. 3 years minimum for this to be fixed, assuming the Ukraine war stops tomorrow.